Tinubu-Trump encounter, a stark reminder of Africa's leadership, failure, and fragile sovereignty. Nigeria's presidential aide, Bwala, has announced that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu and US President Donald Trump are expected to meet in the coming days to discuss allegations of a Christian genocide in Nigeria. The proposed meeting follows Trump's recent statements accusing the Nigerian government of failing to protect Christians from terrorist violence, remarks that have reignited both domestic and international debate. In his comments, Trump warned that the United States could cut off aid to Nigeria and might consider military action against terrorist groups responsible for religious killings. While some Nigerians have welcomed Trump's intervention as overdue, others view it as a guise for advancing U.S. strategic interests in Nigeria and Africa at large. A controversial presidency and waning legitimacy. Since his rise to power in what many observers describe as Nigeria's most disputed and corrupt election in 2023, President Tinubu's legitimacy has been under constant scrutiny. His alleged involvement in drug money laundering and certificate forgery during his time in the US continues to fuel skepticism about his credibility on the international stage. For this reason, many Nigerians doubted that Tinubu would ever visit Washington, fearing that his troubled history could complicate diplomatic engagement. The announcement of a potential Tinubu-Trump meeting, therefore, has drawn mixed reactions, between hope and distrust. To some, U.S. intervention appears to offer a last resort in what they describe as a failing Nigerian state, a country increasingly unable to fulfill its basic obligation to protect lives and property. They argue that the targeted killing of Christians, though denied by Tinubu's administration, is a long-standing reality that predates Nigeria's independence. Others, however, warn that external intervention is both dangerous and hypocritical. They recall that many of the same Nigerian politicians now in power once appealed for U.S. intervention against the former administration, citing mass killings of Christians in northern Nigeria. Ironically, those same leaders now deny or downplay the worsening atrocities occurring under their own rule. One undeniable reality is that President Bola Tinubu stands politically vulnerable, driven by an intense desire to cleanse his tarnished image and secure a second term in office. This desperation makes him susceptible to external manipulation, particularly in dealings with powerful foreign leaders like Donald Trump. Under such pressure, Tinubu may be willing to concede far more than is prudent, trading away Nigeria's or even Africa's broader interests in exchange for international legitimacy and political survival. Diaspora voices and the shadow of imperialism. Within Nigeria's diaspora communities, the issue has generated passionate debate. Many express disappointment that African leadership failures have once again made foreign intervention appear inevitable. They lament that when governments collapse morally and administratively, citizens are left with little choice but to accept even ill-intentioned foreign involvement. Critics point to America's track record in Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, and Libya, where interventions left behind devastated nations and power vacuums. They warn that Nigeria could face a similar fate if it allows itself to become another arena for proxy struggles between the US, China, and Russia. History and hypocrisy. Skeptics also question the sincerity of Western concern for Christian lives in Africa. They remind the world that during the Nigerian Civil War, 1967 to 1970, a conflict that claimed over 1 million lives, mostly Christian Southerners, it was Western nations, including the US and the UK, that supplied the weapons used to crush the secessionist Biafra. For such observers, today's expressions of concern from Washington are less about compassion and more about strategic self-interest. The African dilemma. Regardless of how one views the unfolding situation, the tragedy remains that bad governance and leadership failure have created conditions ripe for foreign intrusion. The inability of African leaders to build accountable and self-reliant systems has made imperialist intervention seem inevitable. But any hope that external powers will genuinely serve Africa's interests is, at best, an illusion born of desperation. If the continent seeks good governance and justice, the struggle must come from within, led by Africans themselves, united in purpose and committed to dismantling the structures of corruption and dependency that keep the continent vulnerable to exploitation. Concerned Africans have also voiced deep frustration over the persistent failure of the African Union and regional bodies to defend the interests of the continent's people. It has become increasingly clear that leaders who have failed woefully within their own countries cannot build a credible, people-centered continental vision. The dysfunction and complacency seen at national levels are simply mirrored on a continental scale, eroding public trust in both the AU and regional organizations that were meant to champion African unity, peace and progress. Africans across the continent and in the diaspora must begin to ask their leaders a hard truth. After decades of summits, slogans and declarations, what tangible benefit has the African Union or any regional body delivered to the people it claims to represent? Diaspoint values your perspective and encourages you to share your thoughts on the topics we present. Diaspoint, Voices of Africa's Diaspora, Powering Change.